Well, this isn't going to be the Deep South's oldest rivalry soon. It's going to just be the oldest rivalry in college football. Auburn and Georgia will meet for the 129th time. Is that correct? A very long time to play. Virginia and North Carolina have met 128 times. So on Saturday, Georgia and Auburn will pass them on that front, which is kind of amazing if you think about it. These two have played that long, about as long as they've both had football programs. And they've got an opportunity to meet in the future more, too, in SEC championship games like they did in 2017, or perhaps the college football playoff. We'll see how that goes for both Auburn and Georgia as things go forward. I remember growing up in Atlanta, and this was just such a huge game for both schools. I mean, Tech Georgia was certainly the quintessential Atlanta game for obvious reasons with the Jackets playing at Georgia, but Auburn was too, and maybe in a different way. There was so much crossover between these two schools. A lot of folks were maybe the brother went to Auburn, the sister went to Georgia, or vice versa. The parents are a split household. I would say there are more Auburn Georgias than there are almost anything else. In terms of like Georgia's rivals, you don't see a lot of Georgia Florida. You see some Tech Georgia, but Auburn Georgia, I mean, you see that a lot. And there are a lot of Auburn people in metropolitan Atlanta. And I drive Georgia a lot. I drive the state a lot. Once you get past Macon and you go to sort of southwest Georgia, there are Auburn people all in that area. That's sort of the Auburn Triangle. Columbus, Macon to maybe Albany or Valdosta, wherever, that quadrant of Georgia, they try to really do well. Montrevious Adams came from Cordele area to go over there. So the other difference now, and in the past, Georgia and Auburn used to recruit against one another a lot. We're not seeing that anymore. Like that's kind of died for some time now, for whatever reason. And Georgia's had a lot of success against Auburn. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head the exact number, but I know Auburn's won twice since 2006. Maybe I'll talk about the 2006 game later in this video. I'm talking about 2024 right now. This is, this is an important game for Georgia. It seems like another game for Auburn. Auburn cannot get out of its own way. Losses to Cal, losses to Arkansas, losses to Oklahoma. They certainly should have beaten Oklahoma, and they didn't. But Cal, I don't know that they were better than Cal or Arkansas. So this is a wounded Auburn team, very limited passing the ball. Kirby doing what he does, and I'm not blaming him. Talking about how they're a good team and all this stuff. Their record doesn't show that, and when you watch them play, it doesn't show that. Now, I know well enough that Hugh Freeze is one of the few people who's coaching in college football that's beaten Kirby. I think maybe the only person, now I could be wrong about this, the only other person is Kalen DeBoer. Because a lot of, Nick has got half the wins against Kirby. And then, Dan Mullen's done. The coach at Vanderbilt, he's out. Will Muschamp's an assistant at Georgia, behind-the-scenes assistant at Georgia. So there's a lot of people that Georgia lost to with Kirby Smart as the head coach, that the coaches on the other team are not there anymore. But Hugh Freeze is one of them, and they really drilled Georgia in 2016. That was not the same thing as right now, though. That was a Mississippi team that was in full gear, about as good as Hugh Freeze's groups were going to have. That was a really high the expectations for that Ole Miss team in 16 were pretty high. They lost to Florida State, I think. This is all going off memory. Lost to Florida State coming out of the gate. Georgia was not ready for what it got into that Saturday morning in Oxford. I don't know if Auburn's ready for what they're about to get into. But as you saw a season ago, Auburn can play up to Georgia and Alabama's level, particularly when it's at home. On the road, they've had a much harder time. I mean, Auburn's not pressed Georgia in Athens. Now, I'm going to have to say it in my head now. So, 05, they won the game on the last play of the game. It was wild, a kick to win it. 05 was 05, 7 blackout, 9 was a tight Georgia win, but a win. 11 was a blowout. 13 was back to backs Auburn. Auburn games. I bet we'll see that happen. I think that if Josh Brooks would really like to do one thing, he would like to see Auburn come to Athens 2 years in a row. We'll see if that ever happens. But I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. Okay, so 14, Todd Gurley blowout. 16, Kirby Smart upsets top 8, Auburn. And then, I'm sorry, that was 16. 18 was kind of a boring game. This game could be like the 18 game where it's just not super interesting. That's a really good Auburn defense, though, with Derek Brown and company. And then in 2020, it turned into a slow-motion blowout. Bo Nix could hardly do anything. Gus Malzahn. 22, it took a long time for it to become a blowout, but it did. It was 42-10, something like that. And this line is at 25 almost. Let me look. I may have over-exaggerated that right there, but it's pretty big. And, that's the thing with this game. Auburn and Georgia, it used to be a coin flip game. It is not anymore. I mean, Mark Richt really did yank this thing from Auburn having control of it. Now it's 23-22, so it's back down a little bit. Fridays, you can see it late Thursday night, and then Fridays you see the betting lines kind of, matriculate a little bit. I picked Georgia on our video yesterday. I picked Auburn, but I actually changed my pick in the written form. I actually think Georgia is too much for Auburn. I think they'll cover the line. I think that Auburn's going to have a hard time scoring. I think that over time, with the exception of the Kentucky game, we've seen Georgia score on everybody. I mean, and quick too. So there's that. Now, that leads me to this, and it's something that Kirby doesn't get aggravated about it, and he should never really get aggravated about questions, to be honest with you, but whatever. It's his prerogative. The start, getting off to a fast start, that is such a tricky thing, to be honest with you. You don't have to win the game in the first quarter. There's no requirement that you get up, like in basketball terms, there's no requirement that you get up 10 in the first, 8 minutes of the game. And that's sort of what we're trying to pressure Georgia into doing is like, why aren't you scoring really quick? People aren't saying that about the Alabama game, of course. But it's that they should be playing better at the start of games offensively, I would say. In this past game, the whole team. But, it is a 60-minute game. And, you can win a game in the second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter, and sometimes you can win it in the first quarter. Alabama probably beat Georgia in the first quarter, but you wouldn't have known it in the fourth. So that's kind of my point here is, where are we, what are the expectations? The expectations now at Georgia from its fans, perhaps understandably, is that Georgia comes in and absolutely smashes whoever's out there. Smashes them. Like, the other team is not permitted to make plays. Nothing. It's just pure blood and guts. That's it. That's not how sports is. Now, that could happen Saturday. That could happen next Saturday. I don't know. I mean, Georgia's played the third hardest schedule so far in college football. It's going to get even worse as we go on. You still have to travel to Ole Miss and Texas. You still have to play Tennessee. I mean, Ohio State's going to go the whole season not playing what Georgia is going to play in its first, 5 games, 6 games. So this is not at all the same. I mean, playing Penn State, Michigan, and playing Penn State, Michigan, and Oregon is not at all the same as playing Clemson, Bama, Texas, Ole Miss, Tennessee, and the rest of whoever is left of this thing. I mean, Kentucky wins this week, they will probably be ranked. I don't know who they may be off. Kentucky had a long stretch there at the beginning. Everybody, I think they are off. So we'll just see how this thing goes. But I think the expectation of going and blowing Auburn out, the problem with that is as follows. First of all, these guys who are all playing on the field, they all know each other. Now, it's not like it used to be where you're kind of playing your brother, but they all know each other. If you're playing high school football in Atlanta, it's probably Georgia or Auburn. Not certainly, but those two are going to recruit. And, the second largest state on Auburn's roster, I can't say this is a fact, but it's almost certainly Georgia. So if it's not Georgia, it may be Florida, but it's almost certainly Georgia. It's always been Georgia. Same thing for South Carolina and Clemson. But, there's probably 25, maybe 30 guys that are scholarship guys, not quite half your rosters from Georgia, and they want to play well against Georgia. If you are, the fact is right now, if you're at Auburn, Georgia probably didn't recruit you as hard as Auburn did because the level of player at Georgia is higher. There's not a lot of Derek Browns at Auburn right now. They've got good players, but the Derek Browns, Bo Nix, Cam, Nick Marshall even, those guys aren't there. They're not. They have a talent problem at Auburn right now, which is what Hugh Freeze continues to complain about. What I would say to that, though, is you can go buy players now. So go buy them. And we're talking about Auburn here. Like, we're not talking about, like, this is going to sound bad, but we're not talking about, like, a beacon of light in terms of, morality, right? I mean, Hugh Freeze is your head coach. So go buy players and go get it done. I think that it is Jekyll and Hyde with Auburn. When they play on the road, it's tougher for them. For whatever reason, I'm gonna just go. I'm gonna just look back here lately at where Auburn's been these last few years in terms of winning or playing on the road. It's been tough, and again, they've not won in Athens since 2005, and we're talking about 20 years ago. That's a long time. Just looking at last year, they won at Vanderbilt. And then they won at Arkansas. They lost at A&M. They lost at LSU, which there's no shame in that. They lost to Alabama on the road in 2022. Obviously, they lost in Athens. They lost in Athens. They lost in Oxford. They lost at State. Oh, my God. They lost at Alabama. They didn't win. Did they not win a road game in 2022? Doesn't look like it. In 2021, they lost at Penn State. They beat LSU on the road. They lost at Penn State. They lost at Penn State. They lost at A&M. They lost at South Carolina. I mean, it is harder on the road. And then 2020, I know they lost at Georgia. They lost at South Carolina. Yikes. They lost at Alabama. And then they played. So 2020 obviously was a very odd year because of COVID. They played Alabama. They played 3 games after that. So that's weird. It's been tough. They are very good at Auburn, is my global point. They are very good at Auburn. They do a good job of fighting at Jordan-Hare. A lot of people were talking. I want to just spit this out real quick too. Talking about the atmosphere at Alabama. It's not close to Auburn's. They do a way better job at Auburn. They just do. And it's an opinion, but I've been around enough to know that Auburn knows how to get it going at Jordan-Hare. They're great at it, but they're not playing there, and they're not playing. I think their problem this week is on a couple of different levels. They're not playing at home, which I think is really important for them. They're playing a Georgia team that is steady for the most part defensively and has shown explosion on offense. Now, I think people would like it if they were steadier on offense, but, they scored over 30. They scored 34 on the road at Alabama. Not easy to do. Obviously, the Tennessee Tech game, whatever. They scored a bunch of points. They scored over 30. They scored 34 against Clemson. Not a bunch of chumps on defense. I mean, it is very possible Georgia's played the best 2 defenses they're going to play this year. It's possible. I want to see what Texas has got, and Tennessee's defense looks good. But I want to see but there's no question that Kentucky has one of the best defenses in the country. Statistically, you can't say that about Clemson, but the reason why is because they're playing all their third string, second string guys in these blowouts, and they're giving up points. So, I I think their front seven at Clemson is really good. I think Alabama's front is pretty good, but their back is bad. And, Georgia showed that this past week. So Auburn can kind of hang in there, but this may be like a Clemson situation where, and Auburn's not as good as Clemson, like not even close. So it may be, but what I mean to say is that when you watch this game this weekend, I don't know what will happen. I really am genuinely curious to see where is Georgia at right now. Are they feeling sorry for themselves because they lost to Alabama, which would be a huge indictment of the program? I don't believe that is accurate, but that would be a huge indictment of any team that's playing like that. Or are they saying, hey, we're a machine. The machine just needs to be repaired a little bit, and we're going to keep going. My suspicion is it's the second one, and then they might not even feel like they got to repair it. I mean, they could have lost to Kentucky. I'm not sure. I mean, I can say that out loud. I don't think they came close to losing to Kentucky. I know that sounds ridiculous because they won by a point, but in no way was Kentucky. I never felt like Kentucky was going to win that game. As soon as Georgia got the lead, you could feel things switch completely. I thought it was only a matter of time before they were going to win that game. So, they may feel like we've got all the things that we need. Kirby pretty much said that about the players. And this coaching staff has shown that although they did not do a good job before the Alabama game, getting these guys ready, I think it was an indictment of those guys, to be honest with Kirby and company. That's not exactly a common occurrence. And the other thing too here is this is the 5th game in what could be a 17-game season for Georgia, or a 16-game season, whatever. I don't know. We've got a long way to go. And I'm saying that to myself too because, for us, we've already been to Lexington driving. We've already been to Tuscaloosa. I mean, Atlanta, whatever. But, we've already, just for our bodies, they've played 2 night games on the road. And those are physically difficult for us. I'm sure it's not as difficult for the players because they're flying. But it's all relative, and it's not easy. Probably they got back from Tuscaloosa maybe at 2, maybe 1, something like that. I don't think it would be 3. That's late. Like that can screw you up for Sunday. So, and then that's all building towards the next week. But this is going to be tough for Auburn. They could come out and play the game of their lives, but they did that last year, and I don't see that happening. I see Georgia winning this game pretty solidly. I have them covering. I didn't, now I do. But it's just going to be tough for Auburn, and we'll just see how it goes. Thanks for watching. Sign up for the newsletter. We'll see you on their website.